Hello everyone. Let's take a look at what data visualization is. So as we begin to take our journey deeply into data, we have to begin to understand things around data visualization because everything where we do from data cleaning to data manipulation are done at the back end. But data visualization is more like the front end where every single person is going to be able to judge what you've done. And if you get it wrong at the back end, that basically also means that you get it wrong at the front end. But here is it. There are some industry standards that you have to adhere to in the front end when you're presenting data. So we are going to discover those things that you should do or how you should be able to present your data in such a way that people could understand your data. So what's this data visualization? We say that data visualization is the presentation of data in a pictorial or graphical format to be able to support communication of the story. So we all can agree that pictures would speak, um, would tell us, give us more people understand things, or a greater percentage of persons understand pictures better than seeing a backlog of data. So pictures will be able to tell stories, pictures will give you insights, all right, better insights than just seeing a backlog of data. So pictures or graphs are these things that you need to use to support communication of a story. So the baseline here is that for every single person, what are you supposed to focus on? Your main end goal is to communicate a story. That's your end goal. Your end goal is to communicate a story, right? And then how are you going to communicate the story? Two things will aid you, either pictures or graphics. All right, so there are four main things when we talk about data visualization. We say first, he has to be interactive, he has to be intuitive, he has to be easy to share, and it also has to be a bit very engaging. Let's look at something else. Effective data visualization will help an audience analyze, understand, and to be able to draw conclusions through the summarization of your data. So for your data to be very effective, for visuals to be effective, it needs to be able to help on the audience to have these three key things in mind to be able to analyze, to understand, and to be able to draw conclusions. So while you're finished designing your data, nobody should come back to you and start asking you, oh, what is this? What is that? People should be able to look at your data and be able to make their conclusions. So let's take a simple example here. We have household expense data on this left hand side where we have our months, we have the categories in a month, we have the amounts and all that. And we also have household expense by month, right? We also have household expenses by month. So if you compare these two things together, you could begin to agree with me that presenting your data as a chart is much more interesting and entertaining than putting it in plenty lines of text. Okay, so why is data visualization important? We say that in a business kind of setting, there are a few questions that people want to ask, especially people who are in the management team. They'll begin to ask questions like, is our business doing well? Do you need to take actions or plot a different course? And those are the things that lead us to be able to ask questions. So let's take a look at effective, what we call effective chart, because everything we talk about data visualization would rise and lie on charts. So first, let's talk about less is more. So when you're presenting your data, the very first thing you have to look at is that less is more. Your chart should be able to convey just one message to your audience. So don't try to use charts to convey multiple messages. Um, you must also use titles and labels so the audience understands your message, right? It's important that you label things out correctly so that the audience could understand your message. You need to also use callouts to be able to highlight key messages and direct the audience to findings. All right, so look at how we are going to implement this. Use colors intentionally. You're not a I don't know who plays with colors. So you're not here to play with colors, but you need to be able to use your colors intentionally and not for decorative purposes. You also need to understand the constraints of your medium. How will the chart be presented? So if this chart is going to be printed black or white, then you have to stick to those kind of colors. But if it's going to be presented to a projector, then you actually need to know. So in the aspect of use colors intentionally, my personal advice is that don't use more than 3 colors, all right, in presenting your charts or your reports. Don't use more than 3 colors to present your report. Then a key thing here is that we need to eliminate all chart junk, non-essential informations added to a chart. So there's a key principle that says removing to improving, right? You need to remove to improve. So remove to improve, remove to improve. Never forget these things. So whatever is not contributing or supporting your report, please take it out. All right, so if you look at this chart here, we want to communicate that Chicago is the third most populous city in the country in 2016. So statistics was taken across some cities in the United States, and we want to make sure that we want to sort out that Chicago is the third most populous city in the country as at the year 2016. So if you look at all the charts that moved from the beginning to the end, right? If you look at all these charts that start from the beginning to the end, you see that this chart, first of all, has been purely or poorly presented, right? So first of all, we said less is more. There are too many additions or too many unnecessary details. We also say that don't use colors for too many colors. There are too many colors used for decorative purposes here, and a few other things that we are going to see how will work out. So let's see how we would have done this better. First thing we need to do is we need to always remember that less is more, right? Less is more. So let's make all the bars same color. So we are first going to apply the concept called the concept of similarity. So first of all, we make every single chart, every single bar the same color. The second thing is that we remove the y-axis and keep only the data labels. So one key principle is that anytime you have your data labels on, please ensure that your y-axis is out, right? Anytime you have those data labels on, having an additional y-axis basically means that you're providing too many informations because both things are serving the same purpose. Then the third thing is we need no more y-axis. So because we don't have y-axis, we are removing the grid lines. We don't need the grid lines. Then the fourth thing is that we need to order the population. Remember, our goal is to make sure that Chicago is the third most populous city. And if you look at the previous chart, it was a bit difficult for you to spot where Chicago is, even though Chicago was the first. But you had to look through before you could spot that Chicago is the first. But now we are reorganizing this so that if we say Chicago is the third most populous city, you can just do a simple count 1, 2, 3. You see how the mind, so you have to bring the mind of whoever is going to go through your report. You have to take them through this particular journey. So here we have order the population in descending order. So that has been done. And then we have to flip the chart orientation to a bar chart so that the categories on the x-axis are easy to read. So if you look at here, our categories here are bent, right? So if we flip it to a bar chart, nobody has to bend their head to be able to read this, right? So when you have these categories too long to fit on this, you have to always change the chart to a bar chart, from a column chart to a bar chart. All right, So we flip the chart orientation to a bar chart so that categories on the x-axis are easy to read. We also change the chart title. So you see now that the chart title has been changed. Chicago is the third largest US city as of 2016. And we also indicate how we are calculating it, population, the units population in millions. So if we look at this, New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, and then we go on. So if we go ahead, we have we remove the borders because the borders do not contribute anything. All right, so we just remove the borders, and then we focus on the message of highlighting Chicago a different color. So we use the concept of anomaly to spotlight. And one of the key things you notice in this concept of anomaly is that yes, we are using the concept of anomaly, but we are not using a different color. We are just using a deeper shade of orange to be able to do what we are doing. So you see, we are not using multiple colors. We are not using black. We are not using yellow or pink. I know ladies love pink. We are not using pink. We are just using a deeper, since we are using orange. So we just use a deeper shade of orange to be able to spotlight what we have done. The another thing we needed to do is that we needed to use a different number format to be able to shorten the data labels. So here we have 8.5, 3.9, and 2.7, and this makes our data much more presentable. Now, comparing the before and the after, everybody would agree with me that the after give more life to your reports than the before. And the truth is, your data visualization is the life of every single organization. Organizations that are data compliant rely on your presentations to enable them to make decisions. Okay, so let's look at some classic charting mistakes. So first, we have using pie charts where the data points are very similar. It's difficult to draw conclusions. So when you have the data points very similar, 5, 6, 7, 8, the difference between those things are small, right? Using pie charts is not going to give you, because right here we can't even determine which of the chart of the pie is, each of the slices in the pie is it's bigger than everything looks almost the same, right? So using pie charts where data points are very similar, it's different, very difficult to draw a conclusion. So in fact, in the data world, it is advisable not to even use a pie chart. So you can use as many bar and column charts as possible, but the pie charts, it's advised that you don't even use the pie charts, right? So, and from a professional space of counseling, I'll say that even if you want to use a pie or a donut chart, once your data points are more than 3, please avoid the pie charts. So once it's more than 3, we have San Jose, Dallas, San Diego. Once you have more than these first 3, please avoid, right? So move ahead and use other charts that can give you those expressions. We also have inaccurate scaling. We need to be able to ensure that our representation of data is not biased. All right, so if federal tax cuts expire, you see that 35 and 40, the way the mind interprets 35 and 40, oh, it's just 35 after 35, 40, right? That's the way the mind interprets 35. So, but here is somebody applying the same thing. This is the bias scale where 35 is making it look like 35 is too big than 40. Right. So in that particular case, you have to be very, very careful not to use a bias system in terms of trying to measure things within your data. So it's important that you do that. The missing labels. This would leave your audience interpreting the data in different ways. So don't leave them guessing. So if you look at these particular charts, there's nothing on the bars here, right? There's nothing on the bars here. So you don't know if this is you didn't even know what this is. There's missing label, there's no title, There's no label under here, so you don't know what this chart is plotted against. But if we move to the right, you can see, oh, this is for company A. This is the monthly stock prices for January to June, and under here you can see that January to June is on the x-axis of the chart. All right, so that clearly explains that you just can't leave your charts hanging. You just can't leave your charts hanging. So let's look at another concept that we talk about selecting the right type of chart. Column charts. So we see that a column chart is used to show a comparison among different items. So when what's the goal of what you're trying to do is that you want to be able to compare these to these to these to these to that, then what you're going to use is basically a column chart. All right, so you look at here, we have staff distribution. So we are trying to look at, based on each of the departments, how many staffs do you have in each of these departments, right? So a column chart is used to show a comparison among different items. So we also have a bar chart. So what the bar chart does for us, or a bar graph, is basically used to avoid clutters. When data labels are too long, just like you saw earlier on, when those data labels are too long, then basically we have no option but to use a bar chart to be able to declutter things. Another option is the stacked column chart. So the stacked column chart is actually quite unique, right? It's used to compare many different items and show the composition of each items being compared. So if you look at this stacked column chart here, you see that here I want to look at the distribution. This is very important for NGOs. I want to look at distributions of items across. So we've given out items to be distributed across various places. So now I want to look at those distributions, right? So the distribution, if you look at Lagos State here, tabs were more in Lagos State. We also see phones, and then we can see laptops. So we want to look at how many of those things were distributed in those places. So we're trying to compare many different items and show the composition of items being compared. Then a stack column chart is a very, very powerful chart for you to use. So the line chart is the fourth one, is line chart. A line chart basically reveals trends or progress over time and can be used to show many different categories of data. So a line chart would reveal trends or progress. So when you want to show something that has to do with time, or you have to show something that has to do with distance or a trend, then your best option, or a progress, the best option is to use a line chart. So you see here, we have revenue, but we want to show our revenue over time, you get, or across months, 12 months. So what are we going to use? We are going to use the line charts. So you're showing things across different categories. Then the line chart is a powerful chart that you are going to use. Then we also have one unique chart that people abuse a lot, the waterfall chart. So the waterfall type is generally used to understand the influence of several positives and negative factors on the initial value. So let's look at how waterfall works. Here we have a revenue of 14,500. We now drop our cost of goods. All right, our cost of goods is 5,000. So what this chart does for us is that it deducts 5,000 from 14,500, right? And gives us a gross margin of 9,500. After it gives us this gross margin, we drop another thing, which is administrative expense. So this chart enables us to know if we are in profit, and it shows in the chart if we are in profit or if we are in loss. All right, so you can see how unique the waterfall chart is. So if you're not using it for this kind of process, mostly used by accountants, you're not using it for this kind of process, then there's no sense of even trying to use it. Then we have the donut chart. So donut chart shows a static number and how categories represent part of a whole. So just like an orange, and I want to cut the orange to many sides, right, via many sides. So if I want to show the composition of something, like you see bags, books, clothes, shoes, I want to show how many percentage of those things did I distribute, right? That is when you're going to use the column, the donut chart. So the same thing applies to the pie chart. The pie chart and the donut chart are the same types of chart. Okay, so we have the scattered plots charts. So I'm sure growing up in mathematics, you've heard about X and Y, so you're trying to show scientific data. So you're trying to show scatter charts are often used to find out if there's a relationship between two variables. You want to look at relationship between the x-axis and the y-axis. So if you look at this, you're trying to look at how revenue and minutes of ads. So you're running adverts on different platforms, right? You've run adverts that are 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and also you have 10 minutes adverts. So you're trying to look at which of these ads brought in more revenue, or at every point that you raise these ads, which of these ads brought in greater revenue for the organization. And you see that that falls between an ad that falls between 3.5 and 5 minutes, right? Those are the kind of ads that brought in a whole lot of revenue. Okay, so let's look at dashboarding in itself. What is dashboarding? So we say that dashboarding is a type of graphical user interface which often provides at a glance view of key performance indicators relevant to a particular objective or business process. So dashboards should provide at a glance view. So if somebody looks at the dashboard at once, the person should be able to look at to see the key performance indicators, and the person should be able to look at if at least the key performance indicators had met the target. So dashboards, something must always be compared to something when you're creating dashboards. So what's the benefit of dashboarding? It will decrease the time spent by the audience in trying to think through or analyze the data. It will help the person focus the conversation on areas that might require additional and more targeted analysis. And there are key considerations when we are working on dashboards. First, you don't build dashboards from your mindset. You need to understand your audience expectations, right? What does my audience want to see? So your boss in the office gives you a task and say, please, we need that data analyzed. You don't just go ahead to analyze the data. You ask the person, so what is important to you? What are your expectations? So the person shares their expectations with you, and then you could go ahead to ask more detailed questions, or also ask him what is important to you, what is the core thing that you want to see, and the person can tell you, okay, I want to see how we compare against our competitors in this field, this field, this field. And then by the time you pick up the data, you can go to the database and look at if you even have relevant data that can cater for the person needs, or you need to begin to start gathering data from bottom. All right, so some days could be like that. So before beginning any dashboard, we have to determine the most important questions or questions that dashboard should answer, and any corresponding key performance indicators. If the data is readily available and how to gather it, construct the key message that shows our understanding of the audience needs and their technical background and knowledge. Example, the dashboard for a product manager will be different from the dashboard of a chief executive officer. Why? A chief executive officer is looking at top level things, but the product manager is looking at how many persons are using our products. What are the most used features inside of this product? So you see that different people see different things. A product manager dashboard means nothing to the CEO. So the CEO is trying to look at how is the revenue and their depth. How is it, correlating? That's what a CEO wants to see. But a product manager needs to know what feature is not working. Why are people not using this feature? How can we improve on it? And then makes the team to work towards that goal. There are 3 types of dashboards. There are a bit more now, but these 3 are what I'm going to focus on. We have the executive dashboard, we have the analytical dashboard, and we also have operational dashboard. So executive dashboards contains high-level information in summary form, and it usually covers a long time horizon. So they assist executives in staying on top of key performance indicators throughout the business, right? So these are things that assist executives to be able to stay on top of business. So if you look at this, you see that this is a top level report. We are trying to understand the revenue in 2016 year to date. YTD means year to date. So they are trying to know from year to date means like from the 1st of January till today, right? So the sales that we made from the 1st of January till today. So year to date. So they have a target of about $35 million and they have exceeded their targets by almost $10 million. So you can see the targets, the slim targets line here, and then here they are. So they have to look at the debt to equity, their sales status across different products and in different regions and all that. So those are the things that are important to the CEO or the executive. For analytical dashboards, they are more detailed and used to facilitate more ad hoc analysis. So they allow users to investigate trends, predict outcomes, and discover insights. So analytical dashboards are a bit more detailed. So if you look at these particular reports here, they are trying to look at their sales across 2016, across months, right? And then here's a revenue change. The next slide is a revenue change, monthly revenue change. So they are seeing, was there an increase and decrease? And to investigate more, they are trying to now look at how the weather affected sales. And then they are now comparing some of their top sales, laptops and bags. How did they correlate? What affected people's decisions? So they are trying to understand how those two things affected people's decisions. Operational dashboards, they usually cover shorter time frames in order to focus on specific operating goals. And operational dashboards are designed to be viewed multiple times throughout the day. So they are often used to monitor progresses towards a target. So a typical organization that uses operational dashboards are Lafarge Africa. So Lafarge could purchase a machine that says that this machine could help you to churn out about 10,000 10,000 bags or 10,000 tons, yes, 10,000 tons of cement in an hour. So the people who supplied have said that, but they have also embedded some they have also embedded some um some tools inside of the machine to be able to track. All right. So Lafarge Africa comes in, connects those tools to their databases, and also does sets up their own system. So every hour that that machine produces, they can see it on their board to see that it meets 10,000 tons of cement. So if at a particular hour it doesn't meet 10,000, so you've used it for a month, it's been producing 10,000, you now notice that this particular hour it has produced 7,000. So what they will now need to do is that they will now need to go to that automated machine to check. So maybe it could be that there is a fault. It could be the power, it's not picking it up again. It could be that the fan belt had caught and all that. All right. So it has to be that something is wrong for it not to, all right, meet that target. So they could use those kind of dashboards to be able to understand. Another people that use this is the forex people in the bank. So they need to be able to use it to understand how the different things in the currency market is affecting the changes, all right, which also makes them to adjust the price of the FX consistently throughout the day. So that's why the FX, things like gold, FX, they have an opening balance and a closing balance, right? They always have an opening balance and a closing, stuff like that. So there are also design principles that we should look at. So design principles of dashboard, they refer, first of all, these design principles first of all refer to the distribution of the visual weights of the object, colors, texture, and space. So first we are going to look at balance and proportions. Balance and proportions. So balance and proportions, we look at principles of design. So you see that you shouldn't use too much chart. You see how we have a first, second, third, and fourth chart, and in between we still have white spaces. So white spaces doesn't mean it has to be white. It just means that there is a gap between the first and the second chart. There are gaps between the charts that can enable people to be able to place their eyes somewhere. So it's not, the charts are not just overwhelming anyone. Then emphasis. Emphasis deals with how we bring out what is most important and what should be noticed first by the audience. So you want the audience to notice something first, then you can display that as your first chart, then while putting up your supporting chart to enable the audience to understand what you're trying to do. Then we have repetition and consistency. So that deals with how we can use similar elements to elicit unity and consistency across the dashboard. So if you're using these kind of bars to differentiate something, it's important that you find a way to integrate those unique things across every other one, right? So that there is a bit of consistency are the things that will keep you unique. Then hierarchy talks about how you want dashboards to be read. All right. So here we have this is what you want them to see first. Secondly, this is the next thing, and then this thing, and then this one. How you want people to be able to read and understand. Because remember, you're telling a story. So its story starts from Act 1, Scene 1 to Act 1, Scene 2. You get, so you need to take people through a journey of Act 1, Scene 1 to Act 1, Scene 2. You have to take people through that journey. Then the last thing talks about functionality, how your buttons interact with each other. They require how your audience required to um, navigate your report and all that. So functionality requirements that needs to be met by that dashboard. All right. So it's based on the audience. Example, you need to have something like a drill down that takes persons from, if I have 3 years that I'm working with, 2018, 2019, 2020. Remember that inside of each year, there are months, there are quarters, and what. So I want that if I click on 2018, the breakdown of all the months shows up, right? I have a breakdown of all the months, and I could also have a breakdown of the quarter, and just depends on what your audience wants to see. Okay, so thank you so much for going through this recorded video. So see you in the practical sessions.